Okay, and we're live. So who are you and what do you do?
I am Julian Gilmore and I run Camden Martial Arts. I'm the chief instructor there. I also write fiction, as yet unpublished, but I've written 2.5 novels, and I do all the housework. So I have 3 unfinishable jobs.
And how did we first connect?
A teacher of yours, your secondary school teacher, Marcos Vilches, shout out Marcos. He was training you a little bit when you were a teenager, weren't you, at school?
Yeah.
And then he was out of the country, you were looking for somewhere to train, he put you in touch with me. And yeah, you were probably my first serious senior student. Yeah. And you will be my first black belt, hopefully in a few weeks.
I hope so. I'm doing everything I can, so we'll see. And how have you changed your corner of the world?
By empowering people. A friend of mine was asking me how I was coping with COVID lockdowns and stuff like that during the lockdown. And I remember saying to him, I just said, look, I've got about 50 students. All I can do is just try and make a positive impact on their lives. I've got a very specific example, probably my best example, and probably my finest achievement in 25 years of martial arts training. I won't name her, but I have a student who first came to one of my women-only self-defence classes. The lady who ran Kentish Town Community Centre, where I teach, was there in the office when I turned up, and this future student was already there, and the manager said, oh, here's Julian, he's lovely. And I put my hand out and said, nice to meet you. And she kind of snatched her hands back and she said, oh, I can't touch you. And I thought, well, this is going to be a bit awkward, and we're hitting each other in a minute. Well, that's what I thought. And then she was actually fine with hitting pads and stuff like that. And then she trained there for a little bit, up to confidence, because she now refers to it as she had crippling anxiety. Even when she's not in class now, she walks around with earphones in because she has to listen to music to drown out the world. She's very anxious all the time. But then she joined my mixed adult classes, and within a year or two of that, she'd really come out of her shell, and now she's been abroad twice in her life. Once to train with a friend of mine in the Philippines with his grandmaster doing stick fighting, and another time with me to train with Daniel DeSanto, Bruce Lee's top student. So I've just really changed her life, I think. She would agree with she
Yeah, I know who you're speaking about, and yeah, the fact that she said when we were on that Italy trip, she said, oh, I didn't have a passport until plan these trips. And yeah, I think it was inspiring to see how much her personality has grown and through this. So yeah, that's amazing. So what's next?
Well, kind of more of the same in terms of my martial arts club. We're in March now, and I used to do 1 class of an evening, Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and I'm now putting 2 on. And so really I'm just trying to fill them up at the moment in terms of the club, because I've got a new website, and because I've got twice as many classes, then my numbers have gone a little bit down. So I'd just like to get my 2 classes as busy as the 1 class used to be. Stay on top of the housework was the number 3 job that I have, and the number 2 job in terms of writing fiction, I need to get myself an agent. I've got 1 novel that's completely finished and ready to go. I'm most of the way through a very loose prequel to that. So on the basis that about 22 years ago, it occurred to me that when somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? I just thought, what would I like the answer to be? And I just thought, teach martial arts and write fiction. So I'm making a small living from teaching martial arts. I now need to get some money from writing fiction as well. Otherwise it's a colossal waste of time, although it's not really, because it's good for the soul of creativity.
Well, you've got at least one person on this planet who read it and enjoyed it.
Yes,
me.
no, I get very good reviews.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest hurdle between you and what's next?
Getting an agent from the literary point of view, definitely, because there are lots of good books that never see the light of day, which is particularly galling if you read some rubbish books. In fact, when Muriel, my other half, had read 3 Men of God, which is what I'm trying to market now, she's a very harsh critic, and she said it was really good. And then I saw her she was reading the book after that, and just as a joke I said, is that as well written as the last book you read? And she was like, actually no, it's not. So I do seem to have some skill, as I've been told by professionals as well, and they don't lie to you because that's really unethical. But you need a bit of luck and a following wind, and the right timing, and what are people interested in at any one time. So quite a bit of luck involved. But hard work normally overcomes luck.
And you've got Muriel to keep you
And I've got
humble.
Muriel to keep me humble. Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest change for your industry this year?
I don't know whether. I mean, people are using AI now for their admin. I still don't. I'm not overrun with admin so much that I need to do it, and I wouldn't trust it to do anything without me proofreading it anyway, because they hallucinate, for want of a better word, don't they? Some of these AIs. But whether teaching will be impacted by that, I often wonder. I know you've got certain things that you're potentially going to look into.
Yeah, develop, possibly.
I won't talk about it in any detail. I wonder whether that might be it, but I can't see any time particularly soon. We're a long way short of robots that you would safely want to do anything with. I guess an AI maybe have a look at what you're doing, but I think we're still a long way from replacing martial arts instructors.
Yeah, we both train virtually sometimes, and while it's amazing to have the access to that knowledge without the geographical limits, losing out on the sensitivity side of it, of doing it with another person in the room. It doesn't have to be the instructor. It helps if it's the instructor, you get corrected and you don't build bad habits. So what is something that has changed your mind in the last month?
What blew my mind a little bit was that when I was training with Guru down in Asanto just under a month ago, which was amazing again, as usual, and I've always thought of Bruce Lee was kind of well known as a innovator and experimenting with weightlifting, and thanks to Guru Dan training the Dallas Cowboys, I think that's how Kit Shields drifted into the martial arts, so they were using it for American football. But these days you get, I'd already seen it on YouTube, you have that car jitsu where people are doing jiu-jitsu in cars, in actual legit competitions, I think. I thought that was a new thing, and apparently Bruce Lee was doing that to Tadano Santo like 50 years ago. He was, he just put down in the car and said, like, let's spar now, you can't use your footwork now, can you? So just quite how innovative they were in terms of experimenting with different situations and environments and trying to broaden. It takes a very holistic point of view. If you've got your competitive arts like Taekwondo and even things like Judo and stuff like that, they're very focused on the rules, and they get very good at what they do within those rules because it gets tested all the time. And certainly boxing and Thai and Judo. But some of them have, obviously keeping fit is good for you, but I think PSYOP and JKD and the combative stuff, that they take a lot of very personal protection, and you need to take other things into account, everything from home security to where you park your car and stuff like that.
So what is the change you most want to see in the world?
It's the clues in the question, isn't it? Gandhi was right. He came up with that phrase. Just a bit of compassion and tolerance for your fellow man, because you look at any conflict or situation worldwide and both sides are capable of love and hate. So people should just try and be a little bit more tolerant and just tone stuff down a little bit, and also find importance in the truth. People seem to be so, I guess this is from social media, people are so keen for their side to be right, they're just sharing like wildly biased stuff. So just be objective. It's fine to be centrist, it's fine to think that your guy sometimes says things that you don't like, rather than just going through mental gymnastics to try and justify stuff that's just not good.
And what's something that never fails to change your mood for the better?
I Got a Woman by Ray Charles, which does have a slight bit of casual misogyny because it's a very old song. And actually I went to the Southport Weekender last weekend and I saw Ronnie Size doing a drum and bass set, and he did a drum and bass version of that, and I could not have been happier. Well, I was already in a good mood. So that song always puts a smile on my face.
I love the fact you got to experience it in your new way recently at a place you love going.
Yeah.
And so finally we're at our change of pace question. What would you describe as the different points of view that you can come at martial arts from, and what's the one you would prescribe your training or lifestyle as an instructor too?
I've come up with, so there was a big thing in JKD versus Wing Chun, and I saw, again, Marcos Vilches, who came up earlier on, and shout out Paul Finn as well, who's instrumental in me getting on Guru Dan's instructor program. There's a big thing about Wing Chun is technique driven, as Paul Finn would suggest, and I would listen to him if he's talking about Wing Chun. And Bruce Lee wanted to move away from that and do things principle driven, i.e. I could put X wrist lock on you with my two hands on my one hand, or one hand on an elbow, or even one hand on my head, or one hand on a knee and stuff like that. So the principle is, I guess,
like transferable skills.
Yeah, and it's, I guess the principle is what happens to the other person is the principle, rather than all the different techniques where you can get to achieve the same thing. Plot twist, I'll come up with a new one. Task driven, which I've kind of nicked from Customato, who was maybe the greatest boxing trainer in the world. He trained Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson. He was also a hypnotist as well as a boxing trainer. And when he was managing Mike Tyson, or coaching Mike Tyson, who was a terrifying tearaway in the 80s, when he was a kind of late teenager, I think he was a heavyweight world champ at 19. But he had terrible ego issues and terrible upbringing and stuff like that, which I guess he managed to channel. And he was asking Customato about what he should think about himself when he's in the ring. And Customato said to him, "There is no you, there is only the task."
Okay, what do you need to do?
Yeah, so what do you need to do? So, as came up in another podcast that I was on recently, Dwight Woods asked me about my most Jeet Kune Do moment, and he made one suggestion, and I said no, and I think it is, I was on holiday in Turkey. My daughter was about 4. She was on a lilo on this big swimming pool, but she couldn't really swim, so she was just lying down on the lilo, face down, just using a hand to walk around. And I was walking around the edge of the swimming pool with her. And on one day, they were constructing this enormous inflatable slide thing, which is about 30 feet high. It was a huge thing, and had steps up one side and a slide down the other. And what they were going to do is they were going to tie it in the middle of the pool, at like what, my waist height, so you could climb up one side and slide down the other. But while they were blowing it up, it was almost blown up, just as my daughter had gone past it on her lilo and I was standing next to her, and one of the ropes broke and the whole thing shifted towards my daughter, and I bent down, scooped her up out of the lilo and was holding her in my arms. And I remember thinking, God, that was quite quick. And then a couple of days later, in the hotel complex that we were in, they had entertainments and stuff like that, and they had these guys that were breakdancing, and one of them was amazing, like super athletic, and he had a six-pack and all this because he had his top off and stuff, and it was like really incredible movement. And then when he'd finished, he looked at me and he suddenly dashed over and he's like, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I work in a bank." And this was before as a full-time instructor. And he said, "What sport do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a martial artist." And he said, "I've never seen anybody move as quickly as you did when you picked your daughter up out of the pool the day before yesterday." So that's the task, isn't it? But I was using my martial arts capacity and my capacity for physical movement to snatch my daughter to safety. But we entirely spontaneously, and it was just like, I just suddenly looked at her in my arms thinking, whoa, that was, I don't even know what happened there, which is how you would want a conflict to go. Just, it's over. That was quick.
Yeah, I've had a few experiences that are similar. I won't go into them today. Maybe another story for another day. But yeah, you just recognise that things aren't right. What can you do? What can you not do? And then what is the task? What are the constraints, shall we say? And it's okay, I need to do whatever it is quickly. So she needs to be out of the pool, but it also could be, I need to get home safely without putting this person in hospital, or I need to get my daughter home safely, or I need to get home safely. It's about the task rather than the technique that you're going to use. It depends what you want to achieve from a more holistic point of view. Brilliant. Well, it's been lovely having you on, Julian.
Thanks for having me.